Hello, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile, and this is the show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, we get to talk about everything in between. Wherever you are, however you're listening, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, like, subscribe, like, subscribe. 5-star review, I think, is another one. I think you can do that on Spotify now, too. I'm going to have video access on Spotify, Adam. That's pretty damn cool, isn't it? Today, incredible guest, Adam Geisler. He's the co founder and CEO of Youth Athletes United. He's a vice president at a small company, Authentic Brand Group's there for a minute, CEO of Super Soccer Stars as well. Adam, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, great. Glad to be here. I'm glad to be able to talk about the love of sports.
The love of sports, man. It is when I made the title for this show, I just was like, this is the greatest show name ever. Like this, how is this not going to just completely blow up and go everywhere? So I think we're like 300 episodes in, give or take. So we're doing our thing. We're having some fun with it, helping some
Awesome.
people along the way,
Congrats.
which is always very important. But Adam, of course, the first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
Yeah. You listen. I mean, I think I was probably, similar to a lot of kids. I grew up in Texas. Not that that was similar to a lot of kids, but grew up in Texas.
New Jersey, but
There you go. There
same
you go.
country.
Born on the East Coast, but most of my life in younger life in Texas, and I think like a lot of people, sports is what drove me. It drove all my friendships. It drove a lot of my personality, my character development. And at a very young age, I fell in love with basketball. I was a hooper. I was a baller. I loved it. I would play every single day, and you couldn't tell me otherwise that I wasn't going to play in college or play in the NBA. And had kind of all the dedication and drive and probably none of the skill and athletic ability to meet those aspirations. But I spent all my time really honing my skills and just loving sports. I mean, really apropos to your title. And I think for me, when I got to a point where I got cut from the basketball team my junior year, I thought my life was over, junior high school. And what it really was is it was the beginning for me of saying, if I can't be a participant in sports, I can still have an impact in sports. And it really led me to really focusing on the business side of sports. And that's why I found myself in my 20 plus year career. And it's been some really exciting times and some exciting places I'd love to tell you about. But it all started with, really my passion for the sport and how could I contribute? How could I give back?
Yeah, I love that, and I mean that's where most people, they do fall in love with one particular sport. For me, it was baseball. Hate the MLB, love the sport of baseball. I'm sure I'm not the only person to have that wild take, but I think it's really interesting, right? Like, so first, I just think we'll start with the funny comment where. Isn't it great? Junior year in high school, you think your life's over. Now you look back. I mean, I'm only 30, and like I realize none of that shit mattered. So anybody out there listening in high school, you're gonna be fine. I can almost promise you that. But it's just interesting how personality, friendships, all that stuff is shaped at such a young age from something like sports, right? It's just this activity that we do, and our parents are like, you just go play t-ball, like just swing a bat, it's fun, right? And some people are scared, and some people are better than others. I was terrible at basketball. I was okay at baseball, but really, that's kind of where a lot of my friendships started when I was younger. And then when I got older, and then we started just watching games together, and we get together on Sundays and watch Red Zone, all right. And then that was college. All of college was, Saturdays we'd watch college football, Sundays we'd watch, NFL. And it's just, those are some of my best friends. There's some of the best people that I know on planet Earth, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. And it's just funny how that happens. Now, not everybody then has that drive to work in sports as you did. So what was it, I guess, about the business side after your unfortunate demise to your basketball career? What was it about the business side of sports that at a young age you were like, you know what, I really want to make sure that, you could do a lot of things. The sports industry is an industry, but I really want to make sure that I end up there in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I always felt and said to myself of, follow your passion and the money will come. And, I always saw what sports provided in so many different ways. And so for me, I love business, I love sports. And if I could put those two passions together, I didn't really know where it would take me, but, it ended up taking me to a place today that I absolutely love and adore and have a really good societal impact. But at the time, it was my fraternity brother's father had acquired Everlast in October of 2020. And they were looking for their first marketing director in their 90-year history at the time. And remember, my fraternity brother, who was also the president of the company at the time as well, came back to DC where I just graduated college. Say we were looking for a marketing director. You want to move to New York? I think I said yes within 30 seconds. Moved from DC to New York and kind of started my business career in sports really there. And so, I was in a mixture of sporting goods, apparel, licensing, but also the sports industry of boxing. It was my first real experience in dealing with professional athletes. And I would say I have some amazing stories, probably not appropriate for this podcast, but just some amazing stories and experiences in the boxing world that were just unbelievable. But more than anything, what I saw is I was with a brand that was having an impact on people. People didn't really look at the sport of boxing as getting kids an opportunity, whether it's off the street or an opportunity to make a living or career. And we did a lot of that by selling heavy bags and gloves and various other products all across the world. And it really gave us opportunity to give back to the sport. And again, very apropos to kind of what you're really passionate about, but it was awesome. And so I wanted to keep doing that. And so my ascension within Everlast is I was there for about 10 years. I started out in marketing, dealing with a lot of sports marketing, dealing with a lot of the boxers and the athletes, and kind of worked my way up in the business. And after about 10 years, I was the general manager at the age of 30, president general manager of Everlast. And it was amazing. It was my dream job. I absolutely loved it. I learned so much. And, I learned how to run a company, be in a company, build a culture, do all those things. And I never knew that the business side of sports could be so rewarding.
Yeah, it's incredible when you do find that job that you really have passion about and you can see the change, right? I read every single morning, one of my declarations, I'm changing the world through sports. Now, I don't know how I'm going to do it. Most of the time it's through this podcast because I get to talk to people like you and shed some of your wisdom on the people that I'm lucky enough to have listen to this show. But how do you learn some of those things, right? It's over 10 years, so obviously some of it is like osmosis and other, but like you come in and hey Adam, go talk to this boxer, go talk to these leagues, go talk to these teams. What are we doing? How are we marketing efficiently with them? Where do you even? There wasn't quite that playbook. Right now, that's one of the biggest things, right? Go to the leagues, go to the teams, go to the athletes, influencer marketing, all that. But what was the playbook? And I think you said 2020, if I'm not mistaken, it's 2000, right?
Sorry,
The
sorry,
year.
sorry.
You're good. Just want to
Yeah,
just
yeah.
want to clarify for everybody. It's
Wow.
about
Yeah, yeah. Sorry,
20.
2000. You're right. 2000.
You're
Sorry.
just
Yeah,
2000,
long
couple
time ago.
zeros.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What was that playbook like? Where did you go to? Where did you find that information? Was a lot of it just kind of failing forward and learning? Like how did you go about just developing those relationships and being able to do things in a way to allow you to ascend that high in the company?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you said it really well, kind of, fail forward. A lot of it was there was no real sports marketing in boxing, right? So we were kind of reinventing a little bit, whether it was sponsorships, whether it was how we were activating boxers. Like we would bring them to various sporting goods retailers at the time, Sports Authority or a Sam's or a Costco or Dick's Sporting Goods, and have these boxers who were very regional, who were very well known in their markets, and really engage them with the fans and our product. And we were the only ones doing it. Nobody was doing it in our sport. And it wasn't that revolutionary, but it was really getting back to the roots of what it was. And so we kind of learned our way through it. And there were some really interesting inflection points that really pushed the brand. One of the real creative deals that we did with the brand is we had signed a deal with, I don't know if you remember the show, The Contender, with Sylvester Stallone. Mark Burnett was the producer
Yes.
of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite some time. It was the first boxing reality show on network television. And our brand was all over the place. And so that was really landmark. And so we found our ways to constantly be a part of what was happening at that point in time. And so, that reality television show really put the brand back on the map, and kind of awoke the sleeping giant, as we said many times over with that brand. All of a sudden, everybody was seeing it. Everybody was seeing the physicality and the benefit from an exercise standpoint, but also they were tying the brand to the empowerment of it. And we loved it. We loved it. And it was a real launching pad to licensing our brand into more apparel, both domestically and internationally. It gave us tremendous brand presence. Our sell-through on our products were unbelievable. And, at one point, I think we were the second most seen brand on television behind Coke and Pepsi when that show was actually running.
Wow.
And again, it's not something you learn in school. It's not something anybody says, what's the playbook? It's just being opportunistic and constantly, finding your space. And that's what we did with the brand the whole way through. And it was pretty exciting.
So going from one brand, right, of one incredible brand, and then you move on to Authentic Brands. Was Everlast bought by Authentic Brands? I don't remember the exact history, or did you move
So
on?
yeah, so Everlast, I worked at Everlast for about 7 years till it was acquired by Sports
Okay.
Direct, largest sporting goods retailer of the UK, Mike Ashley. And that's when I took over as general manager for about 3.5 years under their guidance and stewardship. I had a brief stint in between with a sports performance company called Mission. It was doing really, really well. And I think the biggest thing for me before I even got to Authentic Brands Group is I really wanted to test my chops at entrepreneurship. I want to take something that didn't have, at that point, 100 years of history with Everlast, something that nobody knew, and could we really create a landscape and a market? And so what we did really well at Mission is we were disruptors in our industry. So the biggest product that really launched that business is we had this cooling towel technology. We put some amazing athletes behind it: Serena Williams, Drew Brees, Dwayne Wade, and really started to tell this athletic performance story in a really disruptive way, where most people would have said, great, here's a cooling towel, go sell it for $20. We really turned into a piece of equipment and a performance equipment, and really talked about the emotional, how do we unleash that performance in the individual? And we had a rocket ship of a time, turning the business from 3 million to 50 million in 50 years. And for me, that really gave me the entrepreneurial bug, which I was always looking for. And then at that point, I was looking for something different, and I'd never been a part of a sizable company. And I've been part of various steps and pieces of brand management and licensing. And I had an opportunity to go over to Authentic Brands Group and start out running their sports division. So, sports division was one of their 7 pillars, 7 divisions, but it was doing $1 billion in retail, which was small compared to the total amount of revenue and everything else that was going on there at the time. But I had the opportunity to manage Prince Tennis, Spider, Airwalk, Vision Streetwear, Tree Torn. For me, I was a kid in a candy store having all these different brands that I could influence. And the greatest part is, we would find the best in class partners to produce those things. So I didn't have to worry about if I was creating a boxing glove or a cooling towel. We had the best partners creating socks, underwear, sporting goods, tennis rackets, whatever it may have been. And our focus was really, how do we leverage that IP and that brand? Number one, to make sure those partners understood the opportunity, but also that those brand partners understood how big it was. And it was unbelievable the time that I was there, what we saw with this business. And so we'd done some really interesting deals while I was there. I think the biggest deal we did was with Dick's Sporting Goods. So we took was one of the top racket manufacturers in Prince Tennis and went to the number one sporting goods retailer and said, listen, if you want to be authentic in tennis, we have the number one brand for you. So that became a brand where collectively we did all the product development, all the R&D together, but they did all the sourcing, all the brand build out. So you take this tremendous brand, they have access to the consumer, and you start marrying those things. And you think about doing that over, I think now they're up to almost 50 brands and almost 20 billion in retail sales. That's a real powerful concept.
That's a lot of dollars, right? That's
A
something
lot
that
of
most of
dollars.
us were never going to sniff something like that. But the opportunity, it just sounds like your brain worked in a particular way to make these things happen, right? Just the ideas that can put things together. Because one of my questions was going to be, how do you put this stuff in front of customers in no pun intended, in an authentic way? So I do appreciate the story and the anecdote there, because I think that's right. It's really easy, going back to Mission Towels, to just say, hey, go sell this for $20. Like, just go to Walmart. Maybe not Walmart, that's a bad example, but go to some of these stores and just try and put them in the stores and see what happens and see how it works. And, oh, we didn't get enough sales. Well, why didn't we get enough sales? You clearly are looking at it from a way of not just, hey, here's a towel. It's, hey, here's a piece of equipment that you need. Here's the emotional connection. Here are the people that are using this. Here's why they're using this, right? It's the why half the time. And then how they're using it and what they're doing with it. All those types of things I think are very important, especially in the sports world. And clearly you have a lockdown on that, Adam. So I think it's really interesting. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to get to chat with you about everything you've done, because you've done a lot of stuff. One last thing on the apparel and this side of it, right? So you went from Everlast, where you're working with small regional boxers, and now you're going to Authentic Brands, where you're working with Dick's Sporting Goods, right? One of the biggest, retail shops for sporting goods here in the United States. I know Authentic Brands Group, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of licensing, and obviously you're working with more athletes. Like, what was that step up like, right? Going from local boxers to then Dwayne Wade and Serena Williams, and okay, now we're working with Dick's Sporting Goods, and we're having them put our their apparel, using out like how did you kind of level up, and what was that like in the moment? Because I think 10,000 foot viewer taking a step back, damn man, you got there quick and you did a lot of stuff, but I'm sure in the moment it didn't feel as just absolutely a wild hockey stick ride up.
Yeah, no, I mean, you talk about a lot of different things that get you to different places. Everlast, I really learned a lot between licensing IP, brand building, and kind of having those real authentic stories that kind of get you where you were, right? And I'll give you one quick one. When we were at Everlast, one of the really cool stories was we had a factory in the Bronx, and a lot of the fighters, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, would come to that factory because they were local and they cared about the brand, the business. And Joe Frazier wore these amazing boxing trunks, these leprechaun green boxing trunks, in his fight in Madison Square Garden. And the reason that he made them is they were his curtains, his shower curtains. And he said, I want these to be my boxing trunks. So we took them at the time. They made him in his boxing trunks, and that's what he wore out in the in one of the greatest fights ever in Madison Square Garden. And so it's taking those real authentic stories and translating to the customer. And so I think as long as you continue to do that, you find your opportunities. So when you're at Authentic Brands, the first thing that we always did was, well, where did these brands come from and where are they going? And start with their origin story, right? We love origin stories in today's world. And I'll tell you a really cool story that I had when I was at Authentic Brands with one of the smaller brands, but Tree Torn. And we said, listen, Tree Torn needs a bit more of a face. It's got this tremendous iconic shoe, this one great silhouette, the nightlight, but let's make sure that we're telling our story. And it was really strong within the female consumer because they knew it and they really could appreciate fashion, but it lost its way a little bit on the male side. And so let's find somebody to tell our story. So we ended up doing a deal with Andre 3000.
Nice.
And what was really cool about it is we reached out to a bunch of different people. Some of it was strategic, some of it, you kind of make your luck. And he had come back and said, listen, I really want to work with Tree Torn. We said, well, why are you so passionate about it? And he said, well, when I was in high school in Atlanta, I didn't have a lot of money. And my crew, we loved wearing Tree Torns, the nightlight. And I would actually go in my bathtub. I would put reap dye in there, and I would dip my white Tree Torns in there to make different colors that nobody else had. And he had this like true authentic, you can't make that up. Right. And so when you have all these great brands that have these storied histories and you start retelling them and finding ways to tell the consumer, well, if that becomes your formula, great, let's do it for Tree Torn. Well, let's do that for Prince. We know Prince is rooted in tennis. Let's make sure that we get it there. So we make sure we have the right athletes that are using it. Let's tell our story and give people the opportunity to, my first racket experience should be with a Prince tennis racket. And then same thing when you go over to Spider and talk about the ski brand, it's rooted every single time you go to the Olympics, you watch the Olympics, you always see Spider there. Well, you have to be there. You can't not have that because we have to be rooted in our foundations. And you just keep running that story. And I think what Jamie and Nick and those guys have done such an amazing job is they understand that and they're constantly telling stories, but they're looking for those brands that have that heritage. And, a lot of people see this Reebok deal and they just don't understand. Right? They don't understand like Authentic Brands. These guys have 50 brands. They're about to take one of the fourth largest brands out there and they're licensing it. Like, what does that mean? But if you really start to follow the trail of the things that they've been able to do in a really short period of time, they just announced a really landmark deal with Foot Locker, right? So what does that mean? It means that they're going to be collaborating and developing sneakers with Foot Locker, exclusively sold at Foot Locker. So now Foot Locker has the ability to take this authentic brand, look at all their classic silhouettes and make things that are relevant to the kid because they are the tastemaker, right? Mm-hmm. The kid goes to Foot Locker to say what's cool and they help them determine, right? It's a curated assortment. So Reebok starts to be in that sphere of influence again, it will have a huge resurgence. And you see them trying to take those deals and they've done them all over the world in places where Reebok wasn't normally being distributed because it was a wholesale brand. So they've given it a lot of flexibility, but they haven't given up brand control. They've been very mindful to say, we're still keeping our brand base in Boston. That is our hub. That is the innovation playground where we will always work on our secret sauce. We'll always work on making the next great thing. And then we'll make sure we have all these distribution points that we can push it out to. And that is the beauty of licensing that most people just don't understand, especially in our industries, our sport industries. And it's beautiful. And Jamie and Nick and the Authentic Brands Group has done an amazing job doing that, as good, if not, to be honest with you, better than anybody else in the sporting goods space today. But also the fashion and licensing entertainment space as well.
I will say those three stories are why I love having this show so much, because I would not have understood why they bought Reebok, and now it makes absolute sense, especially as you go back to the heritage part. The Joe Frazier one, do people know that? Is that like a known thing? Because that should be more widely like understood. Like the Andre 3000 one, that's kind of like underground a little bit. Okay, that's kind of cool. Like I'm grateful you telling that. But that Joe Frazier one, that's like, as you said, is one of like the biggest fights of all time. Do people know he just wore his shower
No,
curtain? I
no,
feel
no.
like
Again, I wish in today's social media world, had people known at that point in time, oh my God, that would have blown up
yes.
and been unbelievable, right?
Well, hopefully we can blow this one up a little bit, man.
There
That
you
would be
go.
pretty cool.
There you go.
I think that, but no, in sincerity, like that is why I love having the show, learning things like that, and learning fun stories, but also the education aspect of it, of kind of what Authentic Brands Group does, how they do it, and then being able to take those brands and seeing and massaging and feeling ways to say like, okay, well, this is cool. Reebok's kind of on the decline, right? I think I remember who bought them and they sold them in a huge loss or whatever it was.
Adidas, right? So they were
Thank
bought
you.
by Adidas, right? And then yes, Adidas sold for about $1 billion loss.
Yes,
Yes.
over now, bang. Now this great idea is going to come from it. I think there was some rapper, Jay-Z. Is that, am I making that one up? Had something to do with Reebok, or was he potentially going to buy it? Maybe I'm mixing my
He was
stories up a
there
little
were
bit.
a bunch of different people involved in the opportunity to buy it. He definitely was, I think part of the one of the investor groups
Yeah,
that was looking to buy it.
maybe I'm mixing my stories up, whatever. But that's just really interesting, and I appreciate you, kind of just shedding some light on some of this stuff and style and change and culture, because I think obviously apparel has a huge deal to do with culture. And shout out Andre 3000. I saw Outcast live; they were absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, right? You spend all this time at Everlast, you spend all this time at a mega conglomerate in Authentic Brand Group, and then I don't know, I'd say you made a pretty hard right turn. Is that like an okay way to say it? Into what you're doing now in youth sports, right? So you started with Super Soccer Stars, working with youth sports. Like where did this come from? It sounds like the entrepreneurial bug really started to bite you, I guess, a little bit harder. Like where did this idea come from, and why did you decide, hey, this is the time that I kind of want to say thanks to my old job and start doing some new stuff?
Yeah, I was right at that turning point of turning 40 years old, and I felt like I'd done some really exciting things and fun things in life and in business, but I wanted to really be in a place where I felt I was having more of an impact in change on life and society through sports and through fitness. Is again, follow your passion, and again, you get lucky and make luck, right? And so I had three business partners that were all kind of in very similar places in life where they wanted to make a transition. They were all passionate. They all had young kids, all passionate about sports. And for me, one of my really good friends, who also was one of my business partners, heard that Super Soccer Stars was for sale. And again, I was always a constant entrepreneur, always looking for that next opportunity. And I found out about it on a Saturday, LinkedIn the owner on a Sunday, and by Tuesday I had raised capital through private equity, had a management group of 4 people ready to go, and we were off to the races. And that inkling of an idea, I always felt like all these things that I'd done over my past career. Number one, my personal experience at a young age of how I experienced sports, I had to learn it all on my own. Like the resources that kids have today in terms of the influence that we can have at a young age, we didn't have that growing up. So it's just you get out there and you learn, you fail forward, as you said, really appropriately. So for me, I always thought about that with myself, and could I have more of an impact as my first sport experience for kids? And if you live in New York, more than anything, like Super Soccer Stars is a rite of passage. Every single kid has been through it. And so I didn't know much about the brand, other than I knew that if I could take everything I learned between branding, licensing, marketing, my business experience, and put it into this industry, I didn't know where it would take me. I had a feeling, but I knew if I put myself and some smart people around it, we'd figure it out. And so we really went in with this thesis of impacting kids with my first sport experience. So we had acquired Super Soccer Stars and amazing athletes. Today, it's really accelerated to a much larger platform. But again, if we can, when we talk about my first sport experience, there's a huge opportunity and a huge responsibility. So if that kid takes their first soccer class and the coach isn't very good, he's not enthusiastic, and the kid doesn't have a good experience, he or she, they might not just be out of sports, they might be out of soccer forever. I mean, that's what happens. A kid tries it early on. If it's not for them, they don't know, they may not go back to it. So think about the impact that you can have if you can change that paradigm in that right in that shift. And so for us to say we want to have the best in class curriculum, whether it's super soccer stars or other sports, and we want to give kids as many experiences as possible in sports to help them make that decision that's theirs. And that's really what we started to build. And I'll tell you the stories that can come out of it and the impact come out of it are unbelievable. And Layla is a great example as we get into her a little bit.
Yes, very excited to talk about Layla. She's incredible tennis star, very much on the rise. So it'll be a lot of fun to discuss that. I guess what so first I want to say kudos and congratulations on that quick turnaround. It's clearly again you've been in an important industry for a long time. It was probably, I'm not going to say it was easy, but I mean if you do something in 3 days where you raise that much capital, have a board, and do all that, clearly you know a lot of people, and a lot of people respect and commend the work that you did. So I want to point that part out because networking is very important, and I try and tell every college class that I go to, talk to everybody. You don't know whose uncle is really cool that has $100 million, right? So go talk to everybody. I think that part's really important. And it sounds like you did a great job at that, but also your work shines through, right? If you do good work, people are going to notice it. And clearly over your 18 plus year career with those brands, all three of them, multiple brands, clearly you had a lot of good things. I guess, like, why though? Like I get, like, you want to impact kids. Like, you could do a lot. You could coach your kids soccer team. Like, why did you? That's an easy one, right? Like I don't have a kid yet, but when I do, 100% I'm going to coach their t-ball team. I think that's impacting, right? It's at a much smaller level. I'm going to be able to keep my job over here at Caesar Sportsbook doing what I really do enjoy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of other things you could have done to impact some kids. Why did you think, you know what, I want to impact as many kids as I possibly can with this brand right now?
Because again, I think what fewer people are starting to really see, and there is this epidemic, and it's very long term. People aren't really looking at it, but we talk about childhood obesity all the time, at least in our business and in our space. And the pandemic, more than anything, over these last 2 years, has increased childhood obesity within active kids by almost 3 to 5%, inactive kids by almost 7 to 8%. I mean, the numbers are staggering. And there's a lot of reasons for it. One is kids developed some really bad habits over the pandemic, right? They became very inactive. They got very attached to their digital platforms, and they couldn't see and socialize, right? And so all those behaviors, if nobody stands up and says, I'm going to do something about it, like, we have very long-term problems. But more than anything, we've seen the impact of when you do reach those kids and you do impact those kids. They are happier. They're more confident. By the way, they learn better. There's some really great studies and really great books out there. One of my really good friends, Kathleen Tully, she introduced me to this book called Spark, and it really talks about the tie between kids who exercise 30 minutes a day before school starts. Their ability and their grades and their aptitude to learning is exponentially better than those who are inactive. And so we think about, can you have when you leave this earth, when you leave this planet, like, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want to do? I don't care if people remember me. I just want to know that I had an impact. And so having an impression at the beginning stage of these kids' lives and finding ways to do it better and more exciting. By the way, the bigger we get and the more kids that we can impact, the more we can also impact the kids that don't have those opportunities too. And so the other part, and again, some of this, we had a lot of these thoughts and this thesis pre-pandemic, but the pandemic has really accelerated the inequities, right? So people who don't have access to these sport programs, a lot of community rec programs, they closed up because they just didn't have the funds anymore. So our ability to spend more time in volunteering and running classes in those areas that don't have access to sports, like, that is a really big goal as we grow this platform, to not only service those who have the means and have the opportunity and the accessibility, but to really impact those who don't. And
That
so what's better than that?
that was gonna be one of my questions, because I know obviously it's I come from a upper middle class area. We live in the suburbs. My parents weren't millionaires, but we never really struggled. So it was very easy for me to do fall ball and travel ball and this and that. And then my brother, we would do all these things. But I know that I'm, an outlier in a lot of situations where there are a lot of kids that don't have these opportunities, especially, inner city kids, let's call it, where the economic discrepancy is very clearly much different than what I grew up with. So it's really important and it's great. I was going to ask, like, how are you guys impacting there? Because the bigger you get, as you said, the more opportunities you have to impact even more kids. It's like this, the snowball effect, right? As the more it goes down the hill, the more opportunity it has to pick up other kids in its wake, essentially, and allow them to have these experiences. And you said something before that I thought was great, like that first experience is very important, right? If the coach is excited and he's interested and enthusiastic, and then you, as the child, will probably want to do that more because you're going to be excited and enthusiastic and have fun with it. So I guess we kind of talked around it a little bit, but what exactly do you guys do and how exactly do you do it? And how, I saw, if I'm not mistaken, a 200,000 number out there. How are you impacting this many kids actually? Like, what is going on and how are you guys doing it?
Yeah. So essentially, the majority of our business is a franchising business.
Okay.
So our responsibility is we are the purveyors of a brand. No different than Everlast. No different than what Happened Authentic Brands Group. We are
I'm
building
starting to
brands.
connect the dots, Adam.
We're building brands, whereas most people look at super soccer stars, amazing athletes, TGA, which we just acquired, Little Rookies Baseball, which we just acquired, Jump Bunch, which we just acquired. They don't look at those as brands. They just look at them as content providers. I say, no way. These are all brands. It's a brand experience. Every touch point that the consumer goes through, let's treat it that way. And so, what we do that we think is very, very revolutionary. Maybe it isn't, but we go back to our sporting goods roots. Every kid that comes through Super Soccer Stars, we use that as an example, they get an Adidas jersey, right? So get that. That's my first jersey. And so that's really, really cool. It's got the authentic brand. It feels very legitimate. It feels like a soccer jersey. But even cooler is I can customize and put my name on it. So I haven't even taken a soccer class yet, but I start to feel what it's like. I want to unleash that inner athlete, and I start to feel what it's like to be an athlete, right? And they also get their first soccer ball from us. They get to write their name on. So they have that first experience, and the parent gets to introduce it to them the right way. So if we take that type of care and attention to every single one of our programs, and our franchisees take that care and attention to every single one of the kids that they teach, and the curriculum has been curated for 20 plus years. I mean, we've got some of the most amazing content developers of curriculum, and every single piece of curriculum is age and stage appropriate, right? So we're not just saying if you're 3 and if you're 6, you're getting the same program. No way. There's different skills. And so we've really spent a lot of time building that up over time. And we want that kid to have a real sport experience. And so if they're with us for one soccer class and they decide they want to try something else, great. They come over to Amazing Athletes, where we do a different sports skill every single week. And we're teaching them how to throw a baseball, to kick a soccer ball, to swing a baseball. And so all of those sport experience really we want to play within that 3 to 6 age range. And those are all curriculum based. We don't cheat. We don't have a rec sports business. Everything is about teaching the fundamentals of sport. And we say you have to have fun with the fundamentals. So the kid, the coach, the energy's got to be there. We sing songs. We do spaceships and cartoons and have so much fun just playing the game of soccer. And they don't really learn. They don't realize that they're learning as they're having fun playing. That is the secret sauce. And that all falls into this really cool concept where, again, I love about Layla. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but there's a really great book about the sports gene. And it talks about unintentional play and intentional play. And so unintentional play that is our sweet spot, right? That is what we've got to do well. And so the goal is give a kid access to every single different sport. Let them try all these different sports. And then when they have made an intentional decision that this is something that's right for them, and that there is an age piece to it. You really want to do that at about 6 or 7. Give them a path where they can make that decision. And so that athlete pathway is really important to us, And so we hear it all the time about, the person, the athlete has the athletic gene, right? They're naturally born, they can, at age 2, they can swing a golf club or a baseball bat and like their hips are into it. Like, how are they able to do that? But that person, it shows that all the statistics show, again, follow the sports gene, that the participation rates and their ability to stay in the sport and love the sport is exponentially greater if you give them that athlete pathway. And the problem that we have in sports today is we believe that if you want to be the next Tiger Woods, the next LeBron James, whatever it may be. You got to start at 2. And the pressures are beyond. That is not our business. That's not what we want to do. And so that's an important paradigm shift for us to really be at the forefront of.
It's that, and it's specialization too, right? Like that's one thing that I guess, I mean, I think it's coming out more and more that specialization is actually a bad thing, but it's Steve Nash who played an insane amount of soccer, and he also has incredible vision as a point guard. It's Odell Beckham, same thing, incredible at soccer. Well, his quickness is and his footwork is just off the absolute charts, right? So it's that opportunity to not specialize, because if you only use the same muscles and do the same things, you're not going to get the different fluid motions that you're going to get from, sport X versus sport Y. And I think it's really interesting that, as you said, your whole goal is to teach them, show them everything.
Right.
Show the kids everything. They'll figure out which one they like the most. Now, personally, I don't talk to 6-year-olds, so I don't know how the hell you get that out of them, but more power to you, Adam. It sounds like you guys know what you're doing. And I think that part's really important. And again, like, it's important for parents to understand too, right? Like, let them, dude, like, they're kids. Let them see what they like. And if they like one of them, go for it. Have fun, Jimmy.
Yeah, no, 100%. And listen, and I think making sports fun for kids is so much more important because they have so many other things in life that can entertain them. Right? We didn't have distractions. We wanted to have fun. It was which neighborhood kid do we call up, and we're riding bikes and making up games on our own. Like, games are made for them. I mean, social media has really taken over our kids' lives, and we're not even into like the beginning stages of the metaverse and all these other areas that are going to take our kids away from being active. And the reality is, there should be a world of both. Right?
Yeah.
Don't take that away. It's great for them. It's a really interesting opportunity, and that's a place that they're going to be. So you're not going to win by fighting that battle, but let's make sure we're meeting them where they are and having fun with them and giving them another opportunity, another vehicle that they can enjoy just as much, if not more, when done right and when done well.
I played a lot of video games as a kid. I mean, I'm still active now. Like I just picked up tennis actually. This late summer, early fall, picked up tennis. Always wanted to play. Turns out it's a blast. Not very good at it, but it's fun. Just hitting stuff at stuff. It doesn't get any better than that. So you got to just keep doing things.
But think about that comment that you just made in terms of healthy habits, right? And so it's another piece that we talk about is it should be a routine in a good way that kids get accustomed to getting that exercise, right? You make it part of the routine, but make it something they enjoy. Because what happens is in today's world, and what we really want to shift is kids go through sports, and you really go through team sports, and either you stay in it or you're out. Usually by 12 or 13 is where kids either opt in or opt out. And then if they're opting out, what are they doing? Are they going to the gym? Are they doing?
Not at 12.
Are they staying active? And it seems to happen that those who opt out, you don't pick those healthy habits up until really kind of after you graduate college and you're on your own. You say, well, the metabolism isn't working the same way anymore. And so you start to get those healthy habits at such a later stage in life. Why can't that be a pattern that you do all through life? Why can't that 30 minutes or 45 minutes of exercise be something that kids who aren't elite athletes can still participate in and still have in their life? And so we think there's a huge white space in that gap to keep those kids in sports and activity in some shape or fashion that are not as competitive, but still fun for them, so we can keep that healthy habit trend all the way through. You shouldn't wait till your mid-20s or 30s to have those habits.
No, 100%. If I just kind of thinking back, so I played baseball to my sophomore year of high school, and then I guess around like 18 or 19, wasn't able to drink beer, but was in a beer league softball, right? We had like a team of like 18-year-olds, and we were going up against like 45-year-old dudes. We got absolutely crushed, but it was still fun. It was like something to do. So we did that during college, and that's kind of what got me back into it. But if I didn't start doing that, I probably would have been, until after college, probably a couple years after college, got a couple extra bucks. So it's really not that big a deal, and you can go do something like that. So I think it is really important. Just as you said, that time, that's a really great point. Cause I mean, I was a little bit different, but I'd stopped at 15 instead of 12. And then I started up again a little bit before the graduation of college. But I think there's a lot of people that fall into that bucket of, I mean, you can still like just go join a rec soccer league. I have a bunch of friends who are in a rec soccer league. They're all just 30-year-olds, just kind of, it's a little cold out sometimes, but they're still having fun. They're doing what they love. It's not super competitive. It's just,
but why are they doing it? But why are they doing it 30?
Because they love soccer.
But also for the social aspect of it.
Yes, right? That's true. It's all their friends. All of our friends are there.
So. All their friends. And so you think about bringing that down some ages where it's about the social aspect, not the competitive aspect, and there's a huge white space in terms of certainly commercial opportunity, but impact opportunity to keep kids who are getting opted out from sports, because sports at the competitive level, I mean, it has shifted phenomenally. 13, $14 billion landscape. If you are elite, you're elite partly because in soccer and lacrosse and a few of these other sports, which we're in today as well, because you have the means to be able to stay in
Hmm.
club sports. And for those who don't, they get deselected, and we just can't allow that to happen.
Yeah,
And so we want to be part of that paradigm shift.
yeah, I think that's really important because, like, even growing up, like, we knew the kids that went to the, during the winter would go to the, we have here in New Jersey's Jack Cuss, right? It's this giant facility that kids would go to, and they'd, do all the hitting drills and do all that stuff during the winter. If you weren't one of them, like, at that young of an age, an entire season, right? Half of a year where you have the opportunity at very, very good trainers and the opportunity to continue to practice and do all those things versus kids that do not, over 2 or 3 year period, you're going to have a significant advancement versus those other kids. So if you can stay in it in any shape or form, the opportunities to then continue to play longer are important because, yeah, you're right. At like 12 or 13, we kind of knew, like, all right, like, I'm not going pro. But, like, that kid has the opportunity to play in college. Like, he's going to go and play and continue to do his thing. And it was always really interesting just to kind of see stuff like that. And hopefully that's, right. You're not trying to get people to go pro or anything. Just stay social, stay active, find more friends, have more happiness, right? I think all those things are extremely important. We don't need to be,
100%.
$1 million athletes here. So there are two more things I do want to talk about. You've brought her up a couple of times, so we'll talk about Layla. That's more of a positive subject. Let's go to
Okay.
a little bit more of a negative one. We'll
Okay.
start with that. We'll end on a positive.
All right.
The pandemic.
Yeah.
So you started doing this before the pandemic hit. Then, we were kind of really locked down there, I would say, for about 6 to 8 months, depending on where in the United States of the world you were.
Sure.
And then we started to kind of come out of it a little bit. And this last year has been significantly, I'll say, easier, just on kids, on society in general. I think we could all agree upon that. What uh, what were some of those first? And I say this starts as the negative, but I know you're going to turn it into a positive. So I think that's a very important part too. How did you take advantage of the pandemic, right? That first month was probably wild. Like, what the hell are we going to do? All the sports leagues are shutting down, right? Baseball, everything, softball, all shut down. What did you do to take advantage of the situation? Because as a smart businessman as you seem, I know you did something that could say, you know what? All right, this sucks. First 2 weeks over. We're not getting out of this, right? What was it? Stop the curve. That was cute. 2 weeks, guys. Just stay inside for 2 weeks. What did you do after those 2 weeks to make sure you were actually taking advantage of a situation where millions upon millions of people were stuck at home and they really didn't have too much to do?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like every other small business, we felt all those pains between laying people off and furloughing and doing all those things, and feeling like I don't know if we're ever going to be able to make money again, and feed these kids and impact kids and do all the things that we want to do. And after about 2 weeks, we kind of felt sorry for ourselves. We went through the emotional piece and said, okay, well, let's dictate our future, and that's exactly what we did. And so on the corporate side, the franchisees, all of us had a tough time, but on the corporate side, we'd had about 600 coaches. They're all W-2s. We had to lay them all off. And then we said, okay, well, kids still need to see those coaches. They need to see each other. And so we ran virtual programs, and we took about 600 of those coaches, put about 150 back on payroll, and we started running virtual programs for kids, like a lot of other companies did. And we had coaches running programs out of their apartments with their IKEA couches in the back room.
Yep.
And we always say, like, the cool thing about our business, on the amazing athletes and soccer star side at the time, was we always do it in the wild, right? We're in a park, we're in trees, we're in churches, we're in parking lots, wherever we got to be. Give us 20 by 20 of space and we can run classes. So it was in the wild in this virtual format. And it had a great impact on the kids. The kids got to see the coaches that they missed and they hadn't seen so long. They got to see each other. And so it was as good as we could do for the time being. But what we realized more than anything is, man, this is a business where people need to be face to face. And we're fortunate that we were in businesses that, number one, could be outdoors. They could be socially distanced if they needed to be. And so we really leaned into that. And I think what was really cool, and the one thing that became a big opportunity for us, is we basically said, don't come to us, we'll come to you. And so we created the business and made it very mobile. So parents who at this time wanted pods and cohorts and all these different words that we had never used before. And they said, okay, well, I want to determine my soccer class. I wanted this location. These are the only people that I feel comfortable with being with at the time. I want this coach, and I want soccer, I want multisport. We said, great, we'll give you all those things. And we remember it was right about June, and we had sent out a blast to find out what kind of interest we could get from parents. And in one night, there were over 2,000 requests.
Whoa.
And it was like mind blowing. And so a business that was, we'd always run kind of that type of business, but it was pretty small for us kind of pre-pandemic. During the pandemic, it was almost 50% of our revenue across all of our platforms. And more than anything, what was really cool is what we were doing is we're having the parent be the group organizer. So the parent was doing all of the gathering of the kids together. And so they were bringing kids that may have never taken our classes together. But go back to earlier conversations. Why was it successful and why did all those kids want to be together? Because they knew each other and it was social. So we were able to take this social concept that we'd always wanted to gravitate to, because we know a kid who does or doesn't love a multi-sport program or soccer program, if their friends are in it, they're going to be a lot happier.
Gonna do it.
But it's not always easy to make sure that your friend registers at the same time you get in the class that they want to be, or it's at the location they want to be with the coach that they want. And we created this social dynamic that has changed our business forever. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing the type of impact that it can have. And it just allows us to reach more people in a completely different way. So I think that was a really big pivot for us that we've really enjoyed watching and continue to grow in our space.
I think that is incredible. Like, absolutely incredible that you guys were able to come up with this idea, because it's a great idea, especially for at the time. It's still a great idea now, but at the time, obviously, it was extremely important. But then the opportunity, I know, understanding from this conversation, from these 45 minutes we've been together, your whole goal is to impact as many kids as you can in a positive way. And you were never going to get some of those kids just because of the nature of sports. And now, because you're less of a sports, I mean, you're still, it's more of a social, like you kind of flipped it on itself. It's like, well, let's just get all these kids together and kind of run around and do some shit. Like before it was, hey, anybody who's interested in X, Y, and Z. Now it's, hey, you and all your friends get together and we'll kind of go. So I think it's interesting how you kind of flipped it a little bit, because there's an entire subsect of your business now that would have never even tried out what you guys are doing, that are probably now loyal customers that are interested, and they're pulling some of their friends in. It's like, hey, like I started doing this thing. It's fun. Why don't you come along? So that the expansion from just people and parents that were interested in getting their kids involved in sports, it's now like you've kind of spider webbed it out, right? I think that's awesome, man. That is absolutely fantastic.
And listen, we were able to employ coaches again, who like
Yep.
coaches who teach youth sports. Our franchisees and the coaches that we hire ourselves, they do this literally for the love of sports. I mean,
Love it.
it's not about the money they make; it's about the impact they have. And fortunately, they can do both. Like we've got this one coach who's been with us for 17 years, from black hair to gray hair, Coach Michael, and he is a legend on the Upper West Side of New York. I mean, he has impacted thousands of kids. He loves what he's doing. So to give that opportunity back to not just the kids, but those coaches, those educators, our franchisees who live to impact children all across the country and amazing athletes, like it was amazing.
That's fantastic, man. That is awesome. Very grateful. Very glad I asked that question, because that was an awesome answer. And just again, going back to the impact that you guys are making. Now we touched upon it a little bit, but Leylah Fernandez, incredible tennis star from our friends up north, if I'm not mistaken, in Canada. She's doing her thing. Where does this? You were talking about the athlete gene, so I'm kind of curious, like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Was it, hey, she would be a great representative of the brand, or going back to that Andre 3000 story, it's like actually she went through these programs and now she wants to help more kids understand. Like, how did this opportunity come about with Leylah?
Yeah, and I'd say two things. One is, again, you talk about, you make luck and get lucky, and there's a little bit of both with Leylah. But those experiences that I had through life, being at Everlast and understanding the power of what athletes can mean to brands, being with Mission and watching athletes impact brands, being at Authentic Brands Group, and then now in this youth sports space, 4 to 6, nobody's really talking to these athletes. Many reasons. They could be concerned about their social profiles, what they could or couldn't do, what did they stand for. But listen, if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing, right? And so we would rather focus on having these athletes, and we don't care how successful they are. The success that they have in their professional careers is really just gravy for us. For us, it's about their origin story and the why. And so from my Prince tennis days, I knew a couple different agents, and I went to a few of the different agents. One was a really good friend of mine. I said, this is what we're looking for. We want somebody who literally has been through multiple sport experience and chose this sport and understands the origin story of what we do and would be a good fit. And literally it was less than 10 seconds. He says, Layla Fernandez is the person for you. And I'll tell you the best part about why I absolutely love her. There's a lot of things, but this was before her US Open. This was before her US Open run. She made that decision and she stayed with us. Like, again, a lot of people will go through that opportunity and that growth. She stayed with us the whole time because she believed in the power of what we're doing. And she tells this amazing story about her father was a professional soccer player. And he actually didn't want her to be a professional soccer. He wanted her to choose her own path. But her path was my dad plays soccer. I want to play soccer. He said, okay, great. You got to be able to dribble the ball on your foot, dribble it in the air 10 times in a row. And if you do that, then I'll let you play soccer. So she was 4 years old, so determined. Took her about a week to get through it, and she did it. It's like, okay. So then she became really, really good at soccer. And he really saw her going down the path. He said, okay, but before you go down the path, let's make sure we try some other things. So then he tried baseball, and that was good. It was a good experience for her. Then he said he actually went to a Canadian Tire store and said, listen, I need another sport for my daughter to try. I just need something where a ball is like this big and something she could hit with. I'm like, well, have you tried tennis? He's like, no, go over to that aisle, get a tennis racket and a ball. So it was a pink racket with flowers, tennis ball. And Leia tells a story that he gave it to her. And the second she hit it, she said, this is mine. This is what I want to do. And it was awesome. And you can't pay for that type of authenticity, right? It's finding that authenticity that relates to what you want to do. So when she tells that story, that is literally what we're trying to do across this new acquisition that we have, Tennis and Golf Academy, as well as amazing athletes in the other sports. And what's really cool is she also tells this secondary piece of how, even though she didn't play soccer professionally and it's her passion, playing soccer is a lot like playing tennis. You're in the backfield, you're in the midfield, you're in front field, and how you play the ball when in tennis is very similar to how she always approached and saw soccer. And so the fact that she could parallel those two things, and we talk about this sports gene and kind of bring it around full circle, all the experience that she had led her to be a successful tennis player. And if we can tell that story to more people, again, whether they will ever be as successful as Layla in their professional careers or not, it's the concept of exposing yourself to these other opportunities and finding things that are great for you. And listen, I will never be anything better than a C+ basketball player, but I still love it every single day. I still play it a lot. And it's a connection that I have, social connection I have with a lot of people. It's a lot of my friends are built off the fact that I always played basketball, and those are the people I played basketball with. And we want people to be able to experience that in sport. And again, if we don't take a leadership role in that, somebody's got to do it. We want to do it. Might as well be us. And that's got to be, again, our responsibility and opportunity to have that type of impact in people so they don't forget what made us great. Sports has made us great, and it always will, but we need people to really reinvent and really spend that time and care to do something different, because kids change.
Absolutely, man. That was awesome. Shout out Layla. That is such a cool story. You're 100% correct. I think that is just get chills, right? Like that's just kind of one of those stories. And yeah, just going back, if people don't know, I think U.S. Open this past September, she made an incredible run out of literally nowhere. This 19-year-old girl, 18-year-old girl, just absolutely comes out of nowhere. Did she make the semis, if I'm not mistaken?
Made the finals. So she was ranked in about 130 and she was ranked 65, excuse me, and made a run all through the finals and beat Osaka and beat her. Yep. I mean, she did some amazing talent, got all the way to the finals, lost in exemplary fashion. And, really it's changed the trajectory of her career, and it's amazing to see. And now she gets to have an influence on so many more people, young and old. And, we're proud to be a part of that.
And it's, as you said, it's the gravy on top, right? She already signed to you guys. She was already a partner. And then, oh, by the way, now she does this incredible feat, and now she's very, very well known. It was good timing, I guess we could say, on your part, Adam. But it seems like you've done that a couple times throughout your career. But man, this has been absolutely incredible. Adam Geisler, co-founder, CEO of Youth Athletes United. Where can we give me the website? I'll put everything in the show notes. So after you say it, I'll grab all that stuff. But where can we find everything? Social medias, websites, where can kids sign up? How will they find out about it? Where can parents go? Where can we find all this information?
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll put a couple of the brands in there, but Super Soccer Stars, amazing athletes, Play TGA, Little Rookies Baseball, Jump Bunch. We've got a lot. We got a lot of brands. All can be found under YouthAthletesUnited.com. But again, we love it, and we're always looking for people to join our system, join our franchise system, and have the power of impact and unleash these inner athletes in all these kids, where every kid's an athlete. So we love it. We no longer have jobs. We have passions, we have pathways, and we'd love for people to join us.
I think it's fantastic. Get your kids up off the couch, off their iPads, and get out there. Adam, this has been incredible. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.